I single-handedly supported the Marquise's household for 16 years. But after the general returned, he elevated his mistress to the position of equal wife. He said, "Yao Niang accompanied me to the border for many years and suffered greatly. This is what she deserves. But the noble families only recognize me as the legitimate wife." The general thought I was spreading rumors behind his back, cut off my contact with the outside world, and imprisoned me until death. Opening my eyes again, the general just walked in, and I immediately held out a child. "Although the child isn't yours, the wife is." The general's face turned green with anger. That is how the situation is. The general returned victorious, which should have been a joyous occasion for the entire household. Now, the atmosphere in the entire household has hit rock bottom. The common people watching outside the Marquise's residence are all pointing and gossiping about us. Jiang Weiqan watched me lovingly play with the child in my arms, his face growing increasingly livid. He questioned me. "I've been on campaign for years and never touched you. Where did this bastard come from? You shameless woman, utterly disgraceful." I coldly glanced at the mistress Jiang Weiqan brought back. Yao Niang. Yao Niang returned my look with contempt, as if I had committed some unforgivable sin. How ridiculous! When men have numerous concubines, it is called romantic affairs. But I merely brought out someone else's child. So how did I become shameless? I mocked. What, only the magistrate can set fires, but the common people can't light lamps. The veins on Jiang Weiqan's forehead nearly burst. He suddenly closed in on me, raising his hand to slap me, but the slap didn't land. A eunuch's shrill voice came from outside the door. "The imperial edict has arrived at the loyal and brave Marquis Manor. Receive the decrees." Jiang Weiqan glared at me viciously, then hurried out to receive the decree. In my previous life, the imperial edict also arrived at this time. Jiang Weiqan returned victorious from battle, and was elevated by His Majesty to the rank of Duke Protector of the nation. But he used his reward to exchange for another decree. He petitioned His Majesty to, in consideration of Yao Niang accompanying him to guard the border for 16 years, and enduring all kinds of hardships, elevate Yao Niang to a second Zan-class lady of imperial mandate, and bestow marriage upon the two of them. He made a big show of elevating a mistress to the status of equal wife, yet he didn't mention my existence at all. This move was nothing short of trampling my dignity into the mud. At the time, I was furious, but he rebuked me for being jealous and scolded me. "Shu Jairong, when you were enjoying comfort at the manor in the capital, Yao Niang was accompanying me to guard the harsh borderlands. How much suffering did she endure for me? How much criticism did she face? Why should you get all the benefits while she doesn't even have a proper status? This is what she deserves." Just like that, Jiang Weiqan married Yao Niang with high profile, treating her as an equal wife. He thought that by doing this, he could have Yao Niang replace my position. But after their marriage, Yao Niang didn't receive the respect she should have. The capital was different from the border. The interactions among noble families were intricate and complex, with many formalities and protocols. How would Yao Niang understand these things? She was careless, and with an intentional or unintentional remark, easily offended other noble families. I don't want to be dragged down by her and end up suffering along with her. So I had no choice but to consider the bigger picture, reminding her every day by her ear about how to deal with noble ladies, following behind her all day cleaning up her messes. But Yao Niang was very dismissive of me. "You ignorant woman, all you can do is use these pedantic things to oppress me. I'm a second Dan-rank imperial lady personally appointed by the emperor. I've accompanied the general into battle, and what are you people?" I was often so angered by Yao Niang's arrogant and rude attitude that I couldn't eat for the entire day. Not to mention other noble young masters and ladies from prestigious families. Over time, the noble ladies became unwilling to acknowledge Yao Niang. When they looked at me, their eyes inevitably held more sympathy, and they'd grip my hands tightly, lamenting how much I'd suffered. But when Yao Niang heard these words, she secretly twisted her handkerchief to shreds. Jiang Weiqin felt that I deliberately stole Yaonyang's spotlight and stirred up trouble behind her back. So he confined me to a remote courtyard. Jiang Weiqin said, "Whenever you appear, people are reminded that she followed me for 16 years without title or status. But Yaonyang accompanied me in battle, and she is the one who truly suffered hardship and injustice. Shuzherong, you've never sacrificed anything, so don't fantasize about stealing the glory that belongs to Yaonyang." He cut off all my contact with the outside world. He locked me alone and helpless in the side courtyard. I begged Jiang Weiqin to agree to a mutual divorce and let me go, but his eyes flickered for a moment, yet he didn't respond. He imprisoned me until my death. Before I died, I finally understood why Jiang Weiqin was stalling with me. If he divorced me for Yaonyang, the world would curse him as a heartless and ungrateful man, damaging his reputation. Before I died, I finally saw through his selfish nature. I died filled with resentment. Fortunately, when I opened my eyes again, I was reborn to the year before Jiang Weiqin won his great battle. Heaven was kind to me, actually giving me a whole year to prepare. So, I prepared a big gift for him. This time, besides his imperial edict of ennoblement, there was an additional imperial edict. Right now, over 100 people from the Marquis Manor were all kneeling in the courtyard listening to the edicts. The common folk watching the excitement outside the gate also perked up their ears to listen. Imperial Edict 1. The legitimate daughter of the Shu family is Ice Zan Clever and Jade Zan Lovable, bestowed the title of Princess Fuxi. Lady Shu has raised Princess Fuxi with great merit and hardship. Conferred the title of First Dan Rank Lady of Yu, may freely enter and exit the palace. By Imperial Decree. Imperial Edict 2. Jiang Weiqin has meritoriously protected the nation with great merit and hardship. Additionally, conferred the title of Duke Protector, by Imperial Decree. After the eunuch finished reading the Imperial Edicts, he suddenly leaned close to Jiang Weiqin's ear. The eunuch whispered, "His Majesty has heard that when Duke Protector was at the border, he lived as husband and wife with a mistress. Since Duke Protector and Lady of Yu no longer have feelings for each other, then hurry up and sign the mutual divorce papers. Don't waste Lady of Yu's youth." The eunuch spoke extremely cryptically, but everyone present, even an idiot, could sense something was wrong. The common people outside had long since erupted in commotion, discussing among themselves. The Duke Protector has been away at war for years. How could he impregnate his wife? I say the Duke Protector should be renamed the Cuckold Duke. Ha ha ha. His Majesty inexplicably allows court ladies free access to the palace quarters. Could he be trying to imitate Yang Guifei from the previous dynasty? You know what I mean, right? XKTSKTSK. This Princess Fuxi is most likely the Emperor's seed. Jiang Weiqin naturally heard the people's gossip and fingered and pointing. The more he listened, the more ashen his face became, pointing at me, his hand trembling with suppressed rage. "Why did His Majesty only address you as Lady Shu? One must know, married women should be addressed with their husband's surname before their own." I glanced at Jiang Weiqin with a half-Zan smile, then lowered my head to look at Fuxing in my arms. The eunuch who delivered the decree rolled his eyes around, then also came forward to play with the baby in my arms. Princess Fuxi is truly as delicate as carved powder and jade. The eunuch's face showed flattery, but was actually twisting the knife. "Look at this. These features resemble His Majesty so much." I smiled without speaking, but hastily rewarded the eunuch with a tray full of gold. But Jiang Weiqin behind me suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Amid the shocked cries of the servants and Yaonyang, Jiang Weiqin fainted from anger. Jiang Weiqin didn't regain consciousness until evening. I sat by his bedside, quietly reading through medical texts. Our Shu family has practiced medicine for generations, and my grandfather was even personally granted the title of National Medical Sage by the former emperor. As for the Zhang family, they were a family of military generals. Back then, His Majesty wanted to bestow a marriage upon him, so he could leave an heir for the Zhang family before going off to war. But as His Majesty went through all the eligible young women in the capital, his brow furrowed deeply, because a great general commanding 1,000,000 troops if married to any powerful official in court, could threaten the imperial throne. In the end, the emperor's gaze fell upon the Imperial Medical Academy. A medical family was respectable enough, yet far removed from the center of power. And the Imperial Medical Academy trained a large number of physicians each year, who could serve as military doctors accompanying Jiang Weikens, and it was a match made in heaven. So with a stroke of his brush, the emperor betrothed me to Jiang Weiken. At the time, the emperor held my father's hand. By guarding the general's manor, you are guarding the realm for me. My father got so excited that he sent most of the Imperial Medical Academy's elite, as part of my dowry, allocating them to Jiang Weiken. The day after our wedding, Jiang Weiken took my dowry and left for the northern frontier, though our Shu family couldn't charge into battle for Jiang Weiken. We also healed the wounded and saved lives at the rear. And I single-handedly managed the Marquis Manor for 16 years. Diligent and conscientious, not daring to slack off in the slightest. I believed I had done nothing to wrong Jiang Weiken. Never did I imagine that the day he returned victorious to the capital would also be the start of my nightmare. I was pulled back to reality by the movement on the bed. When Jiang Weiken opened his eyes and saw me, he immediately flew into a rage. He grabbed the jade pillow and hurled it at me, but I was already prepared, slightly tilting my head to dodge it. Bang! The jade pillow shattered into pieces. He was breathing heavily. The rage of being cuckolded made him lose his reason. At the same time, he also noticed something abnormal about his body. His legs couldn't move anymore. Jiang Weiken's expression changed drastically. "What did you do to me?" I calmly closed the book. "Nothing serious. Just stuck 2 needles in the acupuncture points on your legs to prevent you from jumping up and hitting people again." Jiang Weiken asked suspiciously. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish speaking, a young man burst in. The man was dusty from travel, yet his distinguished bearing was hard to conceal. "Rongrong, I finally found you." The newcomer excitedly embraced me tightly in front of Jiang Weiken. He was so excited he could barely speak coherently. "Everyone in the capital is saying you're holding a baby girl in your arms. Counting the days, this child can't possibly be Jiang Weiken's. So, that means she must be my daughter. Right? Rongrong, tell me quickly. Am I going to be a father?" As soon as the words fell, another pillow flew from the bed. Crash's time. Jiang Weiken also shattered the "Loyal to the Emperor, Love the Country" plaque bestowed by the late emperor that hung on the wall. The furious Jiang Weiken, disregarding his leg's abnormal condition, got so worked up he rolled off the bed. "Where the hell did you pop out from, you adulterer?" He struggled to crawl toward the man. "I'm going to kill you both." The man finally realized there was someone else in the room. He looked at Jiang Weiken, who appeared disheveled yet furious like a mad bull. "Oh, isn't this the Duke Protector?" The man bowed with a smiling expression toward the crazed man on the ground. "This humble one is the current emperor's own uncle, Prince Duan Xiaomingzhan." Jiang Weiken was stunned. He stared at Xiaomingzhan in disbelief, then looked at me. You. Just how many men do you have outside?" Jiang Weiken's fists trembled. "Their uncle and nephew. I must enter the palace to see the emperor. I guarded the borders for the country, enduring wind and sleeping outdoors, while these uncle and nephew were playing with my woman. If this can be tolerated, what cannot be?" Thus, I, Xiaomingzhan, and Jiang Weiken, the 3 of us entered the palace that very night. As for Yaonyang, at this moment, she was locked up all alone in the side courtyard. Truly no one cared about her existence. The emperor was awakened in the middle of the night, suppressing anger on his face. But since Jiang Weiken had just rendered great service to the country, the emperor had to treat him with courtesy. Jiang Weiken's eyes blazed with raging fury. In his extreme anger, he couldn't see the annoyance on the emperor's face. He knelt before the throne, his neck stiff as he asked, "Your Majesty, the common people all say that Princess Fuxi looks exactly like you." The emperor was puzzled. "Princess Fuxi is my own daughter. If she doesn't look like me, should she look like you instead?" Jiang Weiken was so shocked his body swayed 3 times. Xiaomingzhan hung his head dejectedly. "Sigh, isn't Fuxi this prince's daughter?" The emperor rolled his eyes at him irritably. A niece is the same thing, isn't it? But I want a daughter too? Who told you to be useless? Woo, this prince really wants a daughter. Xiao Mingzhan threw a tantrum and rolled around. However, everything before his eyes fell into Zhang Weiken's view, and he only felt as if all the air in his lungs had been sucked dry, nearly suffocating him. Several times, Zhang Weiken's eyes almost rolled back as he nearly fainted again. But in the emperor's presence, he actually managed to hold on. I was surprised that Zhang Weiken could be so resilient, Zhang Weiken said with tears streaming down his face. Your Majesty, are you and Prince Duan even human? The Emperor Prince Duan. Zhang Weiken's eyes reddened. Xu Zhirong is the wife this subject married in lawful matrimony. Xiao Mingzhan sneered coldly. Oh, so Duke Zhang still knows he has a legitimate wife in the capital. How come this prince heard people at the border say that General Zhang's wife is Yao Niang, and the two are deeply affectionate exposed in public? Zhang Weiken's face flushed red, then turned pale. Zhang Weiken gritted his teeth. Prince Duan, don't slander her. Yao Niang hasn't entered the family yet. She is only an outside mistress. I snorted coldly. This time, Zhang Weiken wasn't in a hurry to elevate Yao Niang to the status of equal wife. Of course he couldn't acknowledge Yao Niang's status. Otherwise, it would become a case of him and I, each doing our own thing, both morally corrupt. He wouldn't be able to stand on moral high ground to condemn us. As expected, after Zhang Weiken denied Xiao Mingzhan's words, he dropped a bombshell. Your Majesty, to defile a minister's wife is the act of an immoral and foolish ruler. Your Majesty's actions have broken the hearts of millions of soldiers at the border. The atmosphere in the hall instantly froze. Zhang Weiken acted as if he had suffered the greatest humiliation and wished to dash his head against a pillar and die on the spot. The emperor showed a confused expression. I hastily added, reporting to your Majesty, Zhang Weiken believes that Princess Fuxi, the legitimate daughter, was born from an illicit affair between this minister's wife and your Majesty. The emperor was so shocked his jaw nearly dropped. He thought he must be sleepwalking to hear such absurd remarks. He even viciously pinched his own thigh, and after gasping from the pain, the emperor's face flushed red with anger, and he slammed the table heavily. Preposterous! I see the Duke Protector hasn't woken up yet. Someone, drag him out and beat him awake before he responds. This time the emperor was truly enraged by Zhang Weiken. Just like that, before Zhang Weiken could even cry out his innocence, he was dragged out by the imperial guards and given dozens of heavy strikes with the rod. The emperor's face was as black as the bottom of a pot as he asked me, what madness has possessed Zhang Weiken in the middle of the night? Fearing the emperor would vent his anger on me, I immediately knelt down and cried out my innocence. Your Majesty is wise and just. Zhang Weiken mistakenly believed this minister's wife was unfaithful, and when at the residence, he wanted to beat this minister's wife to death. This consort's wife also wanted to stop him, to tell him not to act rashly, but he wouldn't listen to explanations, and insisted on dragging this consort's wife into the palace for a face-to-face confrontation. This consort's wife is but a frail woman. How could she possibly defy him? Xiao Mingzhan stepped forward to speak up for me. Your Majesty, I can also testify. Just now at the Zhang residence, he also threw a pillow at me and even smashed the imperially bestowed plaque inscribed with loyalty to the sovereign, love for the country. The emperor's temple veins bulged. Zhang Weiken is rebelling against heaven itself. I pressed my forehead to the ground, putting on a delicate and frightened appearance. But the corners of my mouth couldn't help rising. Zhang Weiken is finished this time. The guards were very efficient. Before I had finished gloating, Zhang Weiken was already carried back into the hall. At this moment, Zhang Weiken lay prostrate on the ground, moaning in pain. The emperor, however, sat on the dragon throne with a darkened face. The emperor was so angry his beard bristled. Zhang Weiken, it is only because you guarded the borders for the nation, and have rendered great meritorious service that I address you respectfully as the Duke Protector of the nation. But even if your achievements overshadow your lord, You absolutely must not slander the birth of the legitimate Princess Fuxi like this. The legitimate Princess Fuxi was born to me and the Empress. Considering that you guard the borders for the nation while Lady Shu waits alone at the Marquise's residence, fearing that in the future you would have no children to show filial piety, I placed my own daughter under Lady Shu's name. This is an honor others wouldn't even dare to dream of. Truly unprecedented since the founding of the nation. I wanted to give you a pleasant surprise, yet you give me a terrible shock instead. I see your heart is truly clouded by lard. You've been entangled with lowly women at the border, unfaithful and unchaste yourself. Yet after returning to the capital, you see everyone else as dirty and impure. A fool like you, how are you qualified to lead troops into battle? Effective immediately, I strip you of your title, order you to surrender your military command token at once, return home, and reflect on your mistakes behind closed doors. You shall not leave your residence without summons. The emperor didn't wait for Jiang Weiqin to argue back and angrily left with a flick of his sleeves. Seeing this, I really applauded. Jiang Weiqin has been applying double standards from start to finish, keeping a mistress outside with righteous confidence, yet suspecting his wife of infidelity. Now getting slapped in the face by the emperor is truly satisfying. And so, the three of us were thrown out of the palace. Jiang Weiqin, merely because of his own baseless suspicions, disregarded the imperial family's dignity and barged into the palace in the middle of the night to stir up trouble. He even slandered the emperor to his face. He had thoroughly offended the emperor. The emperor's harsh rebuke of Jiang Weiqin for achievements threatening the sovereign meant he would never trust Jiang Weiqin with important duties again. He had committed a monarch's greatest taboo. I figured if Jiang Weiqin kept clinging on and refusing to leave, the emperor wouldn't be able to control his urge to kill. On the way being expelled from the palace, Jiang Weiqin finally came to his senses. He cursed at me. "You deliberately dug a pit for me to jump into?" I said with righteous confidence. "That is right." He was so angry he wanted to hit me again, but I pulled out a silver needle and coldly confronted him. I definitely couldn't beat him in a fight. But we live together, and I have plenty of opportunities to scheme against him in secret. He probably thought of something and could only leave in a huff. A year ago, I really did think about cuckolding Jiang Weiqin, but on second thought, for such a scumbag, why drag myself into it? Not worth it. So I started digging a pit for Jiang Weiqin. I went to the palace to cry to the emperor, saying that Jiang Weiqin had been away at war for years. Husband and wife separated for 16 years, and I hadn't given Jiang Weiqin even a son or daughter before passing the optimal childbearing age. I was afraid the Marquis household would have no heir, and I'd have no one to rely on in old age. Offspring is a matter of utmost importance. Jiang Weiqin served the country loyally, yet ended up with a separated marriage and no one to rely on in old age. The emperor feared chilling the hearts of the soldiers, so he registered Princess Fuxi, the legitimate princess, under my name. The emperor promised, "When the princess grows up, we'll find a prince consort and let the imperial descendant care for us in our old age." This was an enormous honor. I kowtowed on the spot in ecstatic gratitude for the imperial grace. The emperor wanted to send an imperial edict to Jiang Weiqin, but I intercepted it. Princess Fuxi was still very young at the time, delicate and frail, and often fell ill. I wanted to raise the princess until she was 3 years old before telling Jiang Weiqin this good news. Actually, an important reason the emperor dared to give me the princess to raise was that I came from a family of physicians. Infants in the palace easily died young. If I raised Princess Fuxi, she might actually survive to adulthood. This was a mutually beneficial good deed. The emperor tacitly approved of my approach. But from the moment Jiang Weiqin stepped into the Marquis household, I deliberately led him on, making him think I had cuckolded him. The eunuch who announced the imperial decree was also bribed by me. It is all about exploiting information asymmetry. Princess Fuxi was the first trap I dug for Jiang Weiqin. Half a year later, I went before the emperor again to sow discord. I presented evidence of Jiang Weiqin's remarriage at the border to the emperor. I brought the entire Shu clan with me, and we all knelt before the emperor in unison. I am the legitimate wife bestowed by the emperor himself. Yet, Jiang Weiqin has established a household at the border with another woman. I want to accuse Jiang Weiqin of defying the imperial will and request a divorce. The emperor was greatly shocked, because this matter, if taken lightly, is just Jiang Weiqin being lovesick and keeping a mistress. But if you think deeper about it, a general commanding 1,000,000 troops actually disregards the legitimate wife bestowed by the emperor and dallies with a woman from the border. You must know anything associated with the words imperially bestowed is no longer a trivial matter. If Jiang Weiqin can cast aside the emperor's marriage decree today, tomorrow he can discard the emperor's other decrees. The emperor arranged my marriage to Jiang Weiqin precisely because he worried about not being able to control him. Didn't he? Now, Jiang Weiqin is outwardly compliant but inwardly defiant, already beyond the emperor's control. So I deliberately used what the emperor fears most to drive a wedge between their sovereign and-subject relationship. But the emperor remained silent for a long time before finally sighing. The border campaign has reached its most critical moment. We absolutely cannot have any mishaps or shake the morale of the troops. In this war, the warriors charging at the front lines are important, but the military doctors treating the wounded in the rear are equally important. If the military doctors and soldiers knew you were divided in heart and purpose, how could this battle continue? Zhuzherong, just bear with it for now. I know that you've guarded the Marquise's residence alone for 16 years, and what you've guarded is not merely the deep manor walls, but the vast empire and the people's pieces half a year ago. The emperor had to consider the bigger picture. The emperor wanted me to endure. He also restrained himself and kept silent. But now, Jiang Weiqin has finished fighting the war and is no longer that important to the emperor. So the mistakes he committed in the past have become the flaws the emperor can least tolerate. In my previous life, Jiang Weiqin used his military merit to marry Yao Niang as an equal wife, inadvertently hitting upon the emperor's concerns, and thus managed to preserve his peace for a lifetime. But in this life, Jiang Weiqin lost his reason in his rage. And what he did was tantamount to plucking a tiger's whiskers. Jiang Weiqin is completely finished. Now, although I haven't achieved my goal of separating from him, but Jiang Weiqin was scolded by the emperor for achievements threatening the throne, had his military tally stripped from him on the spot, and was confined to the residence. It is clear that not a single drop of the poison I fed the emperor was wasted. Jiang Weiqin still wants to make a big show of elevating Yao Niang to equal wife. Dream on Jiang Weiqin returned to the general's residence, and he wanted to smash things to vent his anger again. But just as he raised a porcelain vase, he saw Xiao Mingzhan, who had followed us through the door. Jiang Weiqin's face darkened. "What are you doing at my home?" Xiao Mingzhan, "I'm here to pick up my wife's." Jiang Weiqin was so angry he couldn't speak. "How dare you?" "But I helped out a pregnant woman from the back courtyard." "Your Highness, your wife is here." Jiang Weiqin, his jaw dropped in shock. He couldn't believe it. "Why are the two of them, husband and wife, living in my residence?" I answered. "The couple has been childless for years, so they came to me seeking a child and to nurture the pregnancy." Jiang Weiqin, "Then why did he call you Rongrong and hug you in front of me?" "Prince Duan is my distant maternal uncle. It is normal for an elder to call me by my childhood name, isn't it?" I laughed so hard my chest shook. It is his first time being a father. He is too excited, couldn't control his emotions. Please understand, back then, the second day after Jiang Weiqin and I got married, he led troops to war. 16 years had passed in between, so naturally he didn't know much about my family relatives. This was still playing on information asymmetry. Jiang Weiqin. Xiao Mingzhan spread his hands with feigned regret. "What a shame. It was a false alarm." Jiang Weiqin's hand holding the porcelain vase suddenly loosened, and it crashed onto his own foot. Amidst Jiang Weiqin's screams, I quickly took 2 personal maids, carried Princess Fuxi, and left together with Xiao Mingzhan. Jiang Weiqin limped after us. "Jiang Weiqin? You're the mistress of the Jiang residence. Where are you going in the middle of the night?" Xiao Mingzhan sneered. "Naturally to my prince's residence to help the princess with her pregnancy. Or would you rather be locked up until death with you?" Jiang Weiqin was left speechless again. The next day, the emperor posted an imperial notice in the city, clarifying the origins of Princess Fuxi D, which finally put a stop to the outside rumors. Those busybodies, having no gossip to dig up, each dispersed on their own. I was living at Prince Duan's manor, but I knew that forcing Zhang Weiken to divorce me wouldn't be an easy thing. But in this life, without me behind them cleaning up their messes, how long could the Zhang Manor hold on before the Zhang Manor collapses? I need to build up my own power. So, aside from helping Princess Duan with her pregnancy, I also often went to provide free medical consultations at the back courtyards of noble families. In my past life, when I went out socializing bearing the status of the Marquis Manor's mistress, no matter how glorious it was, I was merely borrowing Zhang Weiken's glory. So, living this life again, I want to be glorious through my own abilities. I no longer buried myself in the Imperial Medical Bureau, absorbed in researching formulas to rapidly heal wounded soldiers' injuries. I turned my gaze toward a world without Zhang Weiken. Only then did I discover that in the back courtyards of aristocratic families, there were also many people worth helping. Princess Duan had irregular menstruation, suffered unbearable abdominal pain during her period, making it very difficult to conceive. The old matriarch of the Marquis Manor had given birth to 3 sons, and in her old age would leak urine even from sneezing, got an infection, and suffered unbearable pain when urinating. Husbands who frequented brothels caused their wives to have itching in their private parts, often with a foul odor. These were all things that were difficult for them to speak about to the male imperial physicians during consultations. They silently endured their ailments, just like how they were trapped in the inner quarters, unvalued, their lives unknown to outsiders. The small inner quarters have never been a cage that confines my soul. It is the free world where I can display my talents. I was born into a family of physicians, grew up surrounded by it, and became proficient in medicine. This year, I turned to specialize in gynecology, often traveling between the inner courts of various noble families and marquis estates, treating their hidden ailments, recording symptoms and prescriptions, compiling them into volumes for future generations to study and reference. I don't charge a single coin for consultations, only spreading goodwill everywhere. Gradually, my reputation spread into the imperial harem, and I became an honored guest of the imperial consorts. The empress even regarded me as her right-hand handwoman, urging me to quickly organize my notes so that later a women's medical school could be established at the Imperial Medical Bureau and promoted nationwide, so that women in other regions could also receive this blessing. This is the truth behind why His Majesty granted me free access to the palace quarters. I toil and labor for them, and also for myself. Zhang Weiken can use his position as my husband to restrict my freedom. But can he block the endless stream of noblewomen and imperial consorts who come seeking medical treatment? In this lifetime, no one can restrict my freedom. But I underestimated Zhang Weiken's love and brain. Or perhaps, after I moved out of the general's estate, Zhang Weiken and Yao Niang faced each other day and night. He remembered again the days when Yao Niang accompanied him through hardships at the frontier, remembered their affection. He dragged things out, refusing to divorce me, trying to wear me down to death. On the other side, he widely sent out invitations, inviting influential families in the capital to come to the general's mansion to drink and witness the ceremony. He performed the 3 bows with Yao Niang according to the rites of a proper wife. He said, "Although Yao Niang is not my proper wife, she is better than my wife. 100 years from now, future generations will only remember that Yao Niang and I fought off enemy invaders together at the border. Remember my loyalty to the emperor and love for the country, and also remember that Yao Niang was a woman no less heroic than any man." He couldn't wait to find someone to compose on the spot a stirring love story about the 2 of them defending the border together. He wanted everyone to spread tales of his good name, to praise their love, so he could use the wind of public opinion to change his image in the emperor's heart, and make the emperor remember his merits. Unfortunately, someone immediately refuted him on the spot. "Since you consider Yao Niang your proper wife, why don't you divorce the lady of Yu first? then marry her with proper matchmaking and ceremony. After divorcing the Lady of Yu, she wouldn't have to bear the title of the general's wife while locked away in the deep inner courtyard, and could practice medicine at a clinic. Zan. This is something so many people have hoped for day and night. It is said that Yao Niang was so provoked by the 4 words proper matchmaking and ceremony that she burst into tears on the spot, tore off her red bridal veil, covered her face and ran away. Jiang Weiqin was humiliated and left utterly embarrassed, almost unable to save face. The Sodzan called wedding banquet ended in a hasty mess. The favors I'd been sending for a year played their role at this moment. But Jiang Weiqin blamed me entirely for the disgrace of being scolded at the wedding and unable to save face. It is all her fault. Jiang Weiqin angrily flipped the table. A perfectly good mistress of the house, instead of staying at home, goes everywhere making a fool of herself, causing me to give others ammunition against me. Although he was confined to his residence, the emperor hadn't confined others, so he had Yao Niang return to the military department, borrowed a few dozen trusted former subordinates, and led them to capture me. When they found me, I had just finished examining the Prince Duan's consort, and the 2 of us were sitting in the flower hall drinking tea and chatting cheerfully. Yao Niang rode a steed taller than a person, wore crisp armor and looked quite dashing as she wielded her red zan-tasseled spear. This troop of riders had been on battlefields and killed people when they forcibly broke into Prince Duan's manor. Even the young servants guarding the gate couldn't stop them. Dozens of fully armed warriors standing in the rear courtyard truly exuded a murderous aura. The women of the inner quarters who had never seen such things were all intimidated. Yao Niang sat on her steed, looking down at me from above. You women of the inner chambers, all you're good for is gossiping behind people's backs. But if it weren't for the general and me killing enemies at the front lines, how would you wealthy noble families be able to sit peacefully in your halls, fabricating stories about us? A bunch of ignorant women with long hair and short sight, truly ungrateful, heartless, and shameless. She looked around the flower hall with pride. The smiles of the noble ladies in the flower hall all froze on their faces. I had always known that Yao Niang had a proud streak. She felt that by fighting on the battlefield she was a national heroine, unlike us inner chamber wives who could only depend on men. She looks down on us, so when she opens her mouth, she always tends to offend people. In my previous life, I followed behind her, admonishing her constantly. They were born noble. Their ancestors made great contributions to the dynasty. But Yao Niang impatiently pushed me away, saying, "All you do is use those musty old stories to pressure me." When the general and I were beheading enemy commanders at the border, you women could only hide in the back courtyard chanting about past glories. She has been spoiled by Jiang Weiqin for too long. She truly has become arrogant beyond measure. I curled the corners of my lips. This life, I'll just watch and see how this farce ends. I gave a look to the maid beside me. The maid quietly withdrew. Then, I calmly took a sip of tea and mocked. Can the general's private soldiers casually break into others' back courtyards as they please? Such conduct is no different from bandits. Stop slandering us. Yao Niang furiously pointed her red zan-tasseled spear at me. I'm here under the general's orders to capture you, this rumor monger, and take you back for interrogation. I could tell she was taking out all the anger from being publicly humiliated that day on me. I laughed. Yao Niang, in the capital, only the Court of Judicial Review can use the word interrogation when apprehending criminals. The women around me who had been intimidated also came to their senses. They all started discussing. This isn't the Jiang residence. How dare you barge into someone else's estate? This is outrageous. Do you people have no regard for the law? Yao Niang's arrogant demeanor diminished by half, but she was unwilling to lose face in front of me, so she gritted her teeth and bluffed. When a woman marries, she follows her husband. I'm taking this slut back, Zan. I'm enforcing family law. As Yao Niang spoke, she suddenly grasped the key point. She immediately straightened her back. That is right. It is family law. This slut speaks insolently and disrespects her husband, and she has violated womanly virtue. This slut wags her tongue recklessly and ruins the Zhang family's reputation. She has violated womanly speech. This slut doesn't stay home to support her husband and teach her children, but instead causes trouble outside. She has violated womanly work. The 3 obediences and 4 virtues Shi is violated 4 of them. I'm enforcing family law and taking her back for discipline. What is wrong with that? As her words fell, the entire Cham fell silent. What she brought up was the Lessons for Women's written by Ban Zhao of the Han Dynasty. But our dynasty, since the founding emperor, has had an open atmosphere. We've had an empress, female generals, and precedents of princesses remarrying twice or thrice. The Lessons for Women she spoke of was not a code that every woman must follow. I lazily leaned back and said languidly, "What about you then? If you follow the 3 obediences and 4 virtues, how did you have an illicit affair with my husband at the border without a matchmaker?" Yaoniang's expression changed drastically in an instant. Humiliated and enraged, she raised her spear and charged at me on horseback. But the servants and guards from the back courtyard had already arrived and were fighting with Yaoniang's group. The Princess of Duan grasped my hand and comforted me. "Niece, don't be afraid, even if it means exhausting all the power of the Prince of Duan's manor. This princess will protect you." I was originally cold, hearted, and callous. But hearing the Princess of Duan's words, my eyes suddenly reddened. She, a pregnant woman, was willing to stand up for me. So it turns out, not everyone is as heartless and ungrateful as Zhang Weiken. When people receive my kindness, they naturally reciprocate. This farce ultimately ended with Xiao Mingzhan leading the Imperial Guards charging into the back courtyard. I was the one who sent a maid to notify them, but I didn't expect Xiao Mingzhan to bring so many people that they surrounded the back courtyard watertight. Which blind bastard dares to touch this prince's niece? Xiao Mingzhan rolled up his sleeves, charged in with hands on his hips. Yaoniang and her group saw the situation was lost and had no choice but to surrender on the spot. I stood up, looking down at Yaoniang from above. She was surrounded in a circle by the Imperial Guards. Gleaming blades and spears were aimed at her. She reluctantly threw the red tasseled spear in her hand on the ground, glaring at me with resentment. "If you've got guts, fight me yourself. What kind of skill is it to get help? People don't demonstrate their abilities by being violent and aggressive," I said calmly. "You kill enemies at the front, guarding a region's territory. I save people in the back courtyard, also guarding the common people of a region. Yaoniang, you're not any more noble than me." That day, the noble ladies who were indirectly insulted by Yaoniang rose up in indignation. They jointly submitted a petition to the emperor, requesting that he severely punish the Duke of the Protectorate's mansion. Zhang Weiken instigated Yaoniang and his old military subordinates to trespass into the prince's manor, insult noble ladies, disregard the law, act arrogantly and despotically, committing great treason. She had incurred public wrath, and all officials requested the emperor to kill Yaoniang to vent their anger. I thought victory was in my grasp, and once again knelt before the throne, requesting the emperor to issue an edict allowing me to divorce Zhang Weiken. But the emperor did not directly respond to my request. He ordered me to send Princess Fuxi back to the palace. The emperor said, "That day you openly confronted each other in public, and I feared the princess would be frightened, unable to sleep day and night. I am the emperor, but even more so a father. I hope you understand." The emperor was no fool. He finally saw through my scheme and was angry with me. But considering that the empress had me organize medical records for the future establishment of a women's medical academy, he did not hold it against me. But Zhang Weiken and Yaoniang were not so lucky. The emperor dispatched heavy troops to surround the Zhang manor, allowing entry but no exit, to prevent Zhang Weiken from causing any greater disturbance. Previously, it was house arrest for Zhang Weiken alone. Now it was house arrest for the entire Zhang manor. When I returned the princess to the palace, I kowtowed 3 times to Princess Fuxi. This guilty woman failed to protect the princess completely. I humbly beg the princess's forgiveness. The princess was still an infant in swaddling clothes. When she saw the wet nurse carrying her away from me, she suddenly burst into loud wails. The emperor did not punish me, nor did he take further action against Jiang Weiken, because in recent days, urgent reports came back from the border. Several Khitan raiding parties have been frequently invading our border villages, with suspicious intentions. As soon as Jiang Weiken left, the Khitans made a comeback. This shows that Jiang Weiken has a deterrent effect on the Khitans. I know that the emperor is keeping Jiang Weiken around so he can use him again when the border becomes critical once more. Because of this, Jiang Weiken is quite smug. He had someone deliver a message to me. Just wait. As long as this general stubbornly refuses to agree to the divorce for even one day, sooner or later, I'll settle all old and new grudges together. Jiang Weiken and I have already torn off all pretenses. He won't let me off. Xiao Mingzhan comforted me. Niece, rest assured. With your uncle here, no one can harm you in the slightest. But I said, the Khitan's arrival is far too coincidental. Why not send someone to investigate whether there is something fishy going on? Xiao Mingzhan had a sudden realization. Good. This prince will send someone to investigate right away. After thinking it over, I added, after several rounds, Jiang Weiken and Yao Niang only know how to act impulsively and recklessly, without considering consequences. They don't seem like smart people, Xiao Mingzhan said. Niece, you're right. Those two idiots. This prince doesn't believe that with just the two of them, they could achieve anything at the border. This prince will have people investigate everything. There is definitely something fishy behind Jiang Weiken. After Jiang Weiken was placed under house arrest, I finally got to live peaceful days. Aside from Jiang Weiken frequently sending messages through others to curse at me a few times, nothing major happened. Xiao Mingzhan was busy reorganizing Jiang Weiken's army and helping me investigate matters on the side. I was busy organizing medical records and rushing around to see patients. Yao Niang, on the other hand, frequently sent people to purchase fertility herbs. It seemed she wanted a child. She had followed Jiang Weiken into battle for years, never resting properly even during her monthly cycles. Over time, this had likely damaged her body. If there were a doctor with superb medical skills who specialized in gynecology to help regulate her body, perhaps her wish could come true. But unfortunately, in the entire capital, no one was better at gynecology than me. That winter, under my meticulous care, the Princess of Duan gave birth to a young heir. For a time, my reputation soared. Many women desperate for children came knocking at my door. Jiang Weiken and Yao Niang sent messages through others again, but Xiao Mingzhan finally lost his patience and gave the messenger a beating. The entire Prince Duan's manor was celebrating, and he didn't want to see anything inauspicious. Xiao Mingzhan said with slight regret. This prince really wanted a daughter. When spring came, the information I had Xiao Mingzhan investigate finally yielded results. It turned out that the reason Jiang Weiken repeatedly achieved remarkable victories at the border was because there was a vice general behind him providing strategies and counsel. But when Jiang Weiken came to the capital to report on his duties, he claimed all the credit for himself, never mentioning that vice general at all. This was Jiang Weiken's usual style after all. He takes others' contributions for granted, yet claims success for himself. When I found that deputy general, he was depressed and melancholic, spending his days drowning his sorrows in the pleasure houses. You big shots are all like this, aren't you? The deputy general laughed mockingly. When there is merit, it all belongs to those above. When there is fault, they drag their subordinates out to take the blame. I asked him. So, you're just going to degrade yourself like this? The deputy general said dejectedly. My mother has been ill for many years. If the general hadn't ordered the military physician to treat my mother and sent large amounts of medicinal herbs, my mother would have died long ago. The general has shown me great kindness. I cannot betray him. I laughed so hard, I nearly cried. Jiang Weiken actually used my Shu family's resources to curry favor, then turned around and belittled me as worthless. He takes it for granted that I and the entire Shu family are his possessions. I said to the deputy general, the military physician and herbs were not Jiang Weiken's private property. You're directing your gratitude at the wrong person. I brought that military physician before the deputy general. The physician bowed to the deputy general. I am a healer. As long as a patient is brought before me, I will do everything in my power to save them. It is not because the general ordered me to save people that I treated your mother. But military law is strict. Without the general's order, how could my mother have seen you? Abuse of public resources for private purposes, that is all. I spoke bluntly. All these years, you've risked your life for him, and he has used your military achievements to gain rewards for himself. That is already enough to repay his kindness. The deputy general was stunned. I added, regardless of what personal relationship you have with the general, you two should never mix public and private matters, putting the people of the realm in danger. The deputy general covered his face in shame. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Spring arrived, ice melted and snow thawed. Yet, it was the season when the northern nomadic tribes had the scarcest resources of the year. The Khitan people led 20,000 cavalry to burn, kill, and plunder along the border, acting extremely arrogant. But the emperor's attitude toward Jiang Weiqin was very complicated. On one hand, the emperor returning military authority to him could very well be releasing a tiger back to the mountain. On the other hand, the generals defending the border cities were truly useless, and the court really had no one available at the moment. Just as the emperor was wavering, Xiaomingzhan recommended that deputy general to His Majesty. The two of them were locked in the imperial study scheming all night. The next day, the deputy general was promoted to head general. Xiaomingzhan became the military supervisor, and the two set out on the campaign together. This time, I entered the palace to request an audience, asking His Majesty to allow me to serve as accompanying military physician and go to the frontier together. The emperor was very puzzled, thinking I specialized in gynecology, and since the army was all men, what use would I be going along? I answered, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners are all general practitioners. Furthermore, before I switched to gynecology to build my reputation, I had always been researching at the Imperial Medical Bureau on how to make soldiers' wounds heal quickly. I once again earnestly requested the emperor that if this battle achieved great victory, please issue an edict, allowing Jiang Weiqin and me to divorce amicably. The emperor's expression was complex. A man can divorce his wife, so why must you divorce your husband? I am busy with state affairs and will not interfere in matters between you two. Turns out I had backed myself into a corner. Before leaving the capital, I made a trip to the Jiang residence. Jiang Weiqin and Yao Nyang had been confined in the duke's mansion for half a year, and their conflicts had erupted all at once. Yao Nyang pressed Jiang Weiqin on why he refused to divorce me, and openly bring her through the door, making her the biggest laughingstock in the capital. Jiang Weiqin cursed her for being blunt and reckless, barbaric, without any semblance of a refined lady, causing him to offend the aristocratic families. I stood by the door, listening to the commotion for quite a while. Only then did they notice me. Jiang Weiqin caught up with me and asked, I find it strange, Jan, you're just a woman. If there is nothing fishy between you and His Majesty, how can you have audiences with him so often? Jiang Weiqin's brain could indeed only hold what is beneath the skirt. I answered, the Imperial Medical Bureau arranges imperial physicians to enter the palace daily to check the pulse for peace. Naturally, there are opportunities to see His Majesty every day. But you're not an imperial physician. I am a doctor of the Imperial Medical Bureau. All imperial physicians respect me as their teacher. Jiang Weiqin said urgently, if that is the case, quickly plead my case to His Majesty. Have him restore my official position so I can lead troops to war. At worst, I'll drive Yao Nyang out. I'll let bygones be bygones with you, and you'll still be the mistress of my Duke Protector's household. I smiled slightly, unmoved. Jiang Weiqin scolded me. You ignorant woman. How can you put our personal grudges above the lives of all people under heaven and delay military affairs? You would be the sinner who plunges all the people of the world into misery. I shook my head and said, the Vice-General has confessed everything to His Majesty. During your house arrest, you had someone pass a message to the Vice-General, asking him to leak information to the Khitans. You said that after you returned to the capital, His Majesty was misled by treacherous officials and placed you under house arrest. This would make the Khitans mistakenly believe there were no capable generals at court, which led to the frequent Khitan cavalry raids. And you could also use this opportunity to escape your predicament. Jiang Weiqin's face stiffened. How did you learn of this? I stopped wasting words with him, took out a divorce letter from my sleeve, and handed it to him. When Jiang Weiqin saw the words on the envelope, he angrily tore the divorce letter to shreds. In this world, only men have the right to divorce their wives. How can there be any reason for a woman to divorce her husband? I looked at him calmly. There will be soon. Before leaving, I deliberately glanced at Yao Niang. She returned my gaze with jealous hatred. I smiled and reminded her, "You see, once you had no more use to him, he discarded you like worthless grass." With that, I strode out of the Jiang residence. But that very night, I heard the news that Yao Niang had stabbed and injured Jiang Weiqin. Some time passed after that. On the day of the expedition, Jiang Weiqin, dragging his sick body, knelt at the city gate, where the expedition troops must pass, blocking the army, only seeking to see me once. I ordered someone to escort him to the carriage, but I had no intention of seeing him. Through the carriage curtain, I spoke indifferently. "Speak." Jiang Weiqin's hoarse voice came. "Some days ago, when I was gravely injured, and my consciousness was drifting, I had a dream. In my previous life, I imprisoned you until death. But after you died, Yao Niang and I didn't live glorious days either. In my previous life, Yao Niang and I offended people without knowing it. And in the end, everyone betrayed and left us. It was only later that I learned she was just a chicken that couldn't lay eggs, completely unable to bear children, unable to continue the Jiang family line. Later, I remembered that when you managed the household, everything was in perfect order. Even if I accidentally said something wrong, you were there to clean up the mess for me. So on my deathbed, I regretted it. I prayed to the heavens to give me another chance to start over, but never expected that in this life, I still woke up too late. Wrong. You were also reborn, weren't you? Since that is the case, I know I was wrong now. How about we let bygones be bygones and reconcile? In this life, I will definitely treat you well and make up for what I owed you before." I took out a divorce letter from my sleeve and passed it out through the gap in the carriage curtain. I said, "If you truly feel guilty toward me, then accept this divorce letter." "I won't sign it." Jiang Weiqin went berserk, seemingly wanting to rush onto the carriage, but was restrained by nearby guards. Wrong, I finally got a chance to start over. "I won't give up," he shouted at the carriage. Finally, I lifted the curtain of the carriage, but not facing Jiang Weiqin. I beckoned to Xiaomingzhan. His Majesty ordered Jiang Weiqin to be confined to his residence. Yet he disregarded the imperial decree and escaped privately. What should his punishment be? "Those who defy the imperial decree shall be executed," Xiaomingzhan answered. I lowered the carriage curtain and said, "Let's go. Xiaomingzhan will handle Jiang Weiqin properly." My carriage slowly left the city gate following the army. Upon reaching the frontier, I will continue my unfinished work, and will also establish schools to train female doctors and benefit women. Behind that small wooden door lies a broader world that belongs to me. What is your most satisfying face-slapping scene? A Shuzhirong holding the baby confronts Jiang Weiqin. "The child isn't yours, but the wife is B." The emperor furiously rebukes Jiang Weiqin and strips him of his title. "A fool like you, how are you fit to lead troops into battle?" C. Shuzhirong throws the divorce letter. Jiang Weiqin tears it to shreds in exasperation. D. Yao Niang stabs Jiang Weiqin. Turning against him brings great satisfaction.